First of all, thanks for coming in. A few short, quick questions. I'd have worked on cross-country pipelines. Say you do a wayleaf or roadways or whatever you want to, the different types of work in construction. But if you were doing a wayleaf, you could be going through 100 different farmers. It could be 100 metres wide or 50 metres wide, depending on the job you're doing. And you have to leave the ground back again, reinstate it, what we call reinstate it, to make sure that the farmer, you'll be going through farmer's land. Who accounts for that fertiliser? Is it put onto the nitrates of the farmer on each individual system, or how is it working?
So sorry, David Fitzmaurice,
just say we went.
I took your analogy about cross farms and stuff. You're talking about a contractor, is it?
Yeah. Say we went from Clane to Leixlip in a cross country.
It's not too many green fields up that end.
Yeah, but it still needs water or whatever. So you need to put a pipe underneath. So you're taking out a 50-metre wayleaf.
Yeah.
You're disturbing all the ground. You have to put it back. A contractor has the job of reinstating it. You have to put it back the way it was. Yeah. You have to fence it, do everything. What I'm asking you is, who's accountable for that fertiliser? Is the contractor, or is it the farmers on the individual land? Because the contractor that has
just to take your analogy then, you're saying a contractor has a load of fertiliser and he spreads it from Clane to Leixlip.
The contractor has to get that ground fully prepared back to what it was and leave it back to the farmer.
Oh, okay, that's a specific point. I might defer to my officials on that specific, because it's a very specific point in relation to. Would it definitely be applying fertiliser in that space?
Sure, no farmer will accept grass just thrown in without.
Sorry, right, yeah, because the way we've gone through farmland. Sorry, I was thinking on the side of a road. Okay, I might just bring in Louise.
What about cross-country pipeline?
Yeah, okay.
Thank you very much, Deputy Fitzmaurice, for your question. So just to be clear, agriculture contractors are professional fertiliser end users as defined in the legislation. In those circumstances, if they are spreading fertiliser on behalf of a farmer, the farmer will go and potentially buy that. There's a number of scenarios that
No, you're just not getting what I'm saying. I'm not on about an agricultural contractor, I'm on about a civil contractor. Like, there's 4 or 5 of the big civils in Ireland that does for construction. Say you're putting a big water pipeline from some part of Kildare up to, we'll say, Intel for the sake of argument, and it's a government job. There's this price, and for the likes of Irish Water or someone, and you have to go through people's land. There's a wayleaf. So they are civil contractors, they're not agricultural contractors. Who's responsible for that? So
those civil contractors will be a professional fertiliser end user under the legislation as defined. If they are buying the fertiliser for applying that fertiliser, they will also have to register as a fertiliser economic operator under the legislation.
The civil contractor?
Yes. If they are buying and selling that fertiliser.
No, they're not selling it, to use it to reinstate land. That's what I'm trying to.
So they're not selling the fertiliser?
No, they get a contract to dig a hole right along, and then they put back everything, and then they have to put the ground back as normal. That's what I'm trying to establish.
And whose land?
On farmers' land, but like it's a wayleaf.
It's a number of farmers' lands.
Maybe you can come back to me, or maybe I don't want to keep.
I might bring in Ted on that one as well.
Yeah,
So Deputy, just to fully understand the question, in this case, a contractor is supplying the fertiliser, but he's supplying it to a number of different farmers in a continuous process.
To the farmers, because there's a 50-metre wayleaf that Irish Water will have a deal done with the farmer, that you put a pipe from Oireachtas to Leixlip, we'll say, right? And you go across country right through, but you have to reinstate all that ground because obviously they give a wayleaf. Who's responsible? Is it the farmer that the fertiliser goes on? It is the civil contractor that has to reinstate all the ground, put in the pipe, do everything as a contract from, be it Irish Water or whatever. That's all. And if it's one that you haven't come across, I've no problem waiting that you can reply back to me again.
So, as my colleague has said, if the contractor is involved in the application of fertiliser, they have to register as a professional fertiliser end user. If they're involved in supplying the fertiliser to the farmer, they also register as a fertiliser economic operator.
They're civil contractors, they're not supplying to a farmer.
Whoever is supplying it registers, okay? Now in this case I assume they're applying it on a number of farms, So they attribute the fertiliser that goes to each farm on the database. So if there are 10 farmers involved, they say, well, the smaller farmer obviously had less land, so there's less of the fertiliser attributed to him, and the larger farmer, he or she gets more attributed to them, pro rata with where the fertiliser was actually used.
There's a big problem going to ensue there, with no disrespect. Farmer Joe could be down the road there, and he has a way leaf gone to Irish Water for 6 or 8 months, and at the back end of the year it's going to be September, the reinstatement done. If I'm working on my fertiliser spreadsheet, or what I'm allowed to use, or what my targets are, and they put out an awful lot more, which they will, because you have to try and grow grass and not go back in it, there's a danger that they won't know the amount or the volume, and it's going to be complicated.
That is a very specific point, and if the unfortunate farmer was to have that way leaf go through their land, it would happen in a once-off point. So, like, but the point is here that it will be applied on a per farm basis.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Same. Yes. To answer your question, and the poor farmer that happened to, I know what you're saying from a civil contractor's perspective, but from the farmer's perspective, that's not something that's going to happen very regularly. It'll happen once, it'll be applied to their farm, and it would obviously have to be communication between the civil contractors and the farmer as to how much they can have fertiliser they can have spread in their land, that they're not in that they're within in their means on that. But as I say, in terms of the overall point about this bill, my focus here is the fact that how this will impact farmers on an annual basis and on an ongoing basis. And the point you raise, it's a valid one, but it would be a one-off occasion if it did happen.
What about, can you tell me the cost? I'm looking at down our country, the smaller farms, and you'd have a small merchant, say they might be selling 500 tonne or 1,000 tonne or 200 tonne to farmers in an area. For the IT system, or say I'm talking about a local shop down the road, sells, you can buy a pair of boots, you can go in and get the dinner, you can go out the back and get steaks. And I'm talking about a small operation in a rural area. What is the cost involved on an IT system for the likes of them, or is there any?
Yeah, I might bring Louise on that. It does depend on the business processes, but just Louise for the specific.
Yeah, thank you very much, Deputy. Look, this matter was raised at our stakeholder consultative committee meetings, and we have asked our stakeholders to provide an estimate on the likely IT costs whenever that information is available. I suppose they couldn't provide that until they were at a position when they had what's known as the application programme interface, which is basically the tool that will allow merchants connect their IT systems to our national fertiliser database. But separately, we have been engaging with officials in other government departments and agencies in relation to what supports may be available. But we have asked for detailed submissions on what those likely costs are. There is a cost, and we acknowledge that. But again, the cost depends very much on the systems.
Just to be, and Minister, you'll know this yourself, you come from a rural county. I'm just afraid that the smaller operator will just get out of selling fertiliser, and we're going to leave it to the big operators again if there is a fair big cost to those small shops that do the small amounts of fertiliser.
So, look, I take on board your point, Deputy. Obviously, the last thing we want is any reduction in the competition here that would be the detriment of the farmer or to discommode people, and ultimately these measures can really assist farmers in some ways. There has been a number of interventions here to make it easier for those small companies that maybe core business isn't selling this. As you outlined, they might do a range of different things, and they might sell a small amount of fertiliser, and they have options open to them. They can use the API system, or they can log on through agfood.ie to register in that way, and the system is pretty straightforward.
I have concerns in Northern, but I let the other lads look after that.